Pog, and this is Lord Pog Gaming. I want to do something different today with this video. I want to explore the lore behind probably my favorite killer in all of Dead by Daylight, and that is the Huntress. We're going to gloss over her background a little bit, study her lore, but the biggest thing I want to do is look at the lore that influenced her, and then talk a little bit about how she's so influential to the game and to me as the player. I don't want to look too deeply into just her backstory. There's a lot of channels who have already done this, and I feel they probably have done a better job than I ever could. So we're just going to kind of speed run through that a little bit. I mean, we won't overdo it, but we are going to go through her story, and we're going to pinpoint some areas, and we will backtrack to all of that. If this all sounds a little confusing, just please stick with me, and welcome to the channel. So the Huntress, or aka Anna, some of her game aliases are Aha or Bear, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right, but Aha and Bear, so she's something else. She's straight up out of Russian and just European folklore altogether, but not her directly. I think she's an amalgamation of several things. In fact, I know she is. In this interview from Fangora, who talked to the Dead by Daylight people, there's a link to it, but when I tried to go to it, it was a dead link, so I don't really know what the excuse me, I just hiccuped up. I try to have one good take, just one day. It's a dead link, so I tried to go to it, and it brings me to nothing. So I can put the link in there for anybody who'd be interested, but I don't know. In this interview, they asked what was the inspiration behind the Huntress, and their answer, where the developer's answer was, we were inspired by a lot of very cool folklore from Eastern Europe and Russia. So many cool stories are told about people living in deep forests, cut off from the rest of the world, and yet quite solidly rooted in that rich culture. We looked at a lot of legends that had to do with people that time forgot, a mix of tradition and wilderness. Something also cool is that the lullaby in of itself is actually an old Russian song called, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but we'll give it a shot, Bayushki Bayu. They say they did that to make it feel genuine for like Russian players mainly, so they get that extra layer of intensity from their childhood memories. But honestly, it's such a cool song that it's got its own intensity even for us US players. But that's really cool that that's an actual lullaby, that's not something they created, that it's older than all of us, right? It's older than the game. So who is the Huntress? Who is Anna, right? Or Anna, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Who is she, right? A figure clad in the head of a hare. A most disturbing sight. This new foe holds something human within her. Some shards of ordinary life. She seems to be a hunter. I have met many different beings in this place, but this is the first one with a natural skill of hunting. In any other place, one could deem it a talent, but her knack for tracking, capturing, and killing is something else here. There is something else in her, too. She seems to seek something. This quote about the Huntress is credited to Benedict Baker, who's a character in Dead by Daylight that you never actually see. He's just kind of like a dude who mapped out the entities, realms, and things like that. That's a whole other story in and of itself, and we're not going to get too deeply into that. But let's look at it. Let's look at Anna's lore. Well, like I said, we're gonna kind of gloss over. We're not gonna go too deeply into it. There's plenty of channels that have covered this already, and probably have done a better job than I ever could. So the important things is to know that as soon as Anna was able to walk, her mother started teaching her how to survive a harsh, solitary life in the northern woods. Living in such an extremely remote and dangerous area required skill and resilience. When sunlight became too dim or for productive activities, they would take refuge in their house. It says that Anna's mother is the one that taught her the lullaby that you hear the Huntress sing in the game. And is also the one that made her these masks that she's notorious for wearing. This is all going to be more important when we get into the influences behind Anna. For now, let's just know that yes, we've already discovered that her lullaby is an actual Russian lullaby, and the mask. Just put a pin on that one, because that's gonna come back around towards the end of this discussion. But just remember that the mask is probably the biggest mystery about her and its influence. So, in the story, Anna and her mother eventually go hunting this elk, and this elk just completely wrecks Anna's mom. And they manage to kill the elk, and the elk. What the? They managed to kill the elk, and then Anna's mother eventually dies, and leaving Anna by herself. It says Anna was too small to move her mother's broken body, so she sat with her in the clearing where she had fallen. Eventually, she stood up and started the long walk back home. Still a child, she knew just enough about life in the frozen forest to survive. She followed her instincts and became one of the wild. She got older and stronger and practiced her hunt. As she grew into a dangerous predator, her humanity became a half-remembered dream. So basically what it's saying is that the Huntress becomes an animal. I mean, she was still just a child, and with her mother being dead and no other adult influence, but having learned what she's learned, she would, she became more of a force of nature than anything else. Sort of losing her humanity in the process in order to survive. Eventually, she kills like squirrels, rabbits, foxes, and then moves up to bears and wolves. And eventually, when people start coming into the forest, it says she discovered her new favorite prey, humans. Unlucky souls who strayed into her territory were slaughtered like any other animal. And she liked to collect the things from them, tools, toys, especially toys is what it says. And oddly enough, she couldn't bring herself to kill the children, the little girls. In fact, she starts kidnapping the kids. These are all important things. The elk killing her mother, the fact that she's sort of a force of nature, and now she's kidnapping children, and she would take them home, and they would eventually just end up dying. They would die of cold and starvation or sickness. But what's interesting is the fact that having these children around sort of reawakens the Huntress's like humanity a little bit, and she's not like purposefully trying to kill these children. She actually wants to try and remember that feeling of humanity and and so she keeps re-kidnapping children just so she can feel that again. Eventually, her legend spreads. The villagers spread the legend of the half-beast lurking in the Red Forest, the Huntress who killed men and ate little girls. Eventually, war breaks out in the forest. German soldiers come through, collapsing the Russian Empire. And she kind of gets left alone again. Nobody's really coming into the forest anymore. In fact, a lot of the villages just get abandoned. But she continues to just murk dudes in her forest, these German soldiers. It says many of them were found with violent axe wounds. Whole groups disappeared mysteriously. Once the war was over, though, the rumors of the Huntress disappeared with it, engulfed by the Red Forest. So, and then you can, and there's more legend there. I think you can go into like the vault or whatever that is called, the rift, I think, to expand on her story. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how the rift works or any of that stuff. I'm more of a filthy casual when it comes to this game, but I am just completely fascinated by this character, the Huntress. She's always freaked me out. Mainly because she doesn't really trigger your heartbeat, because you can hear her singing her lullaby from a pretty decent distance away, too. That's what's so interesting about it. And in a way, it makes it harder to gauge on whether or not you should run rather than like wait, because at least the killers who activate your heartbeat, you know when the killer's getting too close because your heartbeat starts to speed up and gets louder. The Huntress can kill you from a very far distance with her hatchets. She throws them hatchets a pretty good distance, and because her lullaby sounds like it's so far away, it's hard to gauge on whether or not she's even really close enough to kill you, or if she's still actually a good distance away and you got a little bit of time. It's definitely an advantage for her, but it's a cool advantage. I mean, I can't even be mad when playing the Survivor because of just how cool she is. So, excuse me. So, let's look at this. Who is Anna, the Huntress? Where did she come from? Where did they really get their ideas from? To do that, I think it's important to look at the first. Really, I scoured the internet. And when I say scour the internet, I mean I just sat down and started looking and just kind of followed a thread and said to myself, this seems good enough. I discovered a folklore called the Leshy. It's Russian or Polish, in that area. Again, they said that they pulled a lot of lore from Russia and Europe in general, but the Leshy's actually male. He's a spirit that rules over the forest and hunting. He may be related to the Slavic god Prowit. Excuse me. Man, I can't quit. What is wrong? Related to the Slavic god Prowit or Porwit. I don't know. I'm probably butchering that. Basically, he's Hircine from Elder Scrolls, right? He's the Daedric prince, Hircine. He's the spirit of the hunt, the spirit of the forest. He's he's depicted as like an old man or just like an entity. But one of the coolest depictions I've seen of him, because he is a shapeshifter. He's an elk, a giant elk with horns, just like in the story the Huntress and how she lost her mother, the giant elk killing her mother. They lived within the forest, the spirit of the forest. It's a force of nature, and already we're starting to see how Anna, growing up by herself, becomes more of the force than she is human anymore. She becomes that force of nature, and that, and I can see the parallels there. Giant elk, force of nature, the forest. It's like the forest killed her mother, and then Anna became a part of that forest. Maybe it's a stretch, but that they have gone on record admitting that they've looked into these different folk tales and these legends and stuff. So it's not such an unreasonable stretch. Of course, that's just an aspect of an idea for how they came up with Anna's backstory. It doesn't really explain where they came up with Anna, except the Leshy is known to sometimes be married to the Kikimora. The Kikimora? I'm probably mispronouncing that as well, but the Kikimora of the Swamp. Now that's an interesting character. I followed that thread, and that took me to a Russian folk creature by the name of the Kikimora. It's like a house spirit is what it's known, and guardian of chickens. Sometimes she takes a chicken-like form, which sounds kind of funny because it's, why would that be relevant to Anna? Other than the fact that one of the Huntress's like legendary skins in Dead by Daylight is the Baba Yaga, and the Baba Yaga also has. If you don't know who the Baba Yaga is, she's a witch who lives in the forest or flies around on a mortar with a pestle, and she flies around, but she like lives in a cabin with these that walks around on these giant chicken legs, and it's just a wild tale. Sometimes she's good, sometimes she's bad, sometimes she's neither. She's just like, I'm here. So there's definitely a connection with chickens there that's just kind of goofy, the Kikimora and Baba Yaga. But those, like I said, the Baba Yaga is just a legendary skin. And, excuse me, I don't know what it is. I've got something going on with my throat, and I think my allergies are kicking in real bad. Like, they're just kicking up, and I'm really sorry about that. Let me just be the first to apologize. I'm trying my hardest not to let it affect me, but it is a little bit. I'm really sorry about that. I appreciate your time and your patience with me here as we go through this little lore series, but there's another aspect of the Kikimora I want to talk about that actually is more involved with the Huntress, other than just the fact that she's sometimes depicted as having chicken feet and this and that. It says she can take all sorts of animal forms, She can sometimes take the form of a beautiful woman or an old lady as well. So there's another interesting parallel you could draw. You could draw the old woman, the hag form she takes, to Baba Yaga, but the beautiful female form that falls more in line with the Huntress, who, but for all intents and purposes, doesn't look old or decrepit. She's not terrifying in a hideous sense. It's what she represents that fascinates and somewhat makes me nostalgic. It's like a nostalgic fear. We'll get there. Just stay with me here. So, the interesting parallel for the Kikimora and the Huntress is the fact that she can change forms. The Kikimora can change forms and make herself look like things. So, you're thinking, well, is he going to talk about the rabbit mask now? Is that... No. The funny thing about this Kikimora is she's known to frighten people or kill travelers who wander into her domain. But she also kidnaps children. And there's also a Russian Bayushki, which I don't know what that means. I think it's a song. I went to it, but it's like a poem or something about one swamp Kikimora who loved to brew beer. Her name was Baba Bolotinitsa. Yeah, I'm trying. When she was brewing beer, fog rose over the river or swamp. And that's neither here nor there, but it's interesting that we run into the name Baba again. And the Russian influence there once again, and the fact that Kikimora are known for basically killing people, as it said in the Huntress's lore. Those unlucky travelers who just found themselves in her territory. Well, the same thing with these travelers on the road. She would knock them off the road and drown them, and keep their children, kidnap their children. So that's, I mean, like I said earlier, she's an amalgamation. She's an amalgam. She's just a soup, a stew, if you will, of folklore that they brewed up in their pot, in their cauldron, their game cauldron, and created the Huntress with it. But one of the coolest things I think about it is the fact that, and I don't know if they did this on purpose. This one might just be a reach, but we still haven't really talked about her style. The rabbit mask, the hatchets, any of that. And I personally believe that with all the folklore they took from Europe and Russia, I think they still made it just a little bit American. I think they still went just a little bit Western with it. There is an urban legend in Fairfax County, Virginia, back in the 1970s, about a dude they called the Bunny Man. Now, it is a guy, but they called him the Bunny Man because he was known for wearing a bunny mask, and he would chase you with a hatchet. He was located in 2 incidences where he would just threaten people with an axe. This was in 1970s Burke, Virginia. And there's a whole wiki page on it that I'm not going to get into, because, I mean, that it's neither here nor there, but there is an interesting comparison there. Like I said, maybe it's a reach. It is a bit of a reach, but that's a little too coincidental for me. And what is an urban legend over here in America? An urban legend is just Americans' version of folklore, really. America's not that old of a country. Countries like Russia and continents like Europe and the different countries there, they've been around for quite a long time, and America is a young country in comparison to all of that. We haven't built up our legends just quite as much as everything else, and things like tall tales like Paul Bunyan and Johnny Appleseed and Pecos Bill, this Bunny Man, the Rake, the Llorona. That is all our folklore. Which, okay, you could say that the Llorona is more Mexico and South America, but I mean this whole area. This whole area from North America to South America is full of a lot of urban legends that is really just another way of saying folklore. And I honestly believe that what the developers at Dead by Daylight did is they took all this cool old world folklore, and then they took an urban legend and stuck it together to make it feel unique. And that really is what the Huntress is. She's unique. She's almost out of all of it. She's more of a tulpa, I think is what they're called. Tulpas. There's a theory out there that if enough people have a conscious thought about something that isn't real, they can make it real. And I think those are called tulpas, but I could be wrong. I wasn't really when I was coming up with this. I don't use scripts. A lot of it's just off the cuff, and I'm surprised I've messed up as little as I have. I guess I try to remember the important things, and so I wasn't really planning on talking about the tulpa. But since we're here, we're gonna go with it. There's an interesting episode of Supernatural where my boys Sam and Dean take one on and take it out. So, rock and roll. But I think they're called tulpas, and that's basically what they do. You can manifest, enough people can manifest this thing into reality, and in a way, that just feels like what the Huntress is. Now, I'm not saying you're going to go out into the forest now and everybody's going to start believing in her, and you're going to go out into the forest and next thing you know, you're going to catch a hatchet to the face. No, but she is a combined effort. She's the creation of a combined effort of different cultures and stories. She's her own thing. She's her own entity. And what she represents, for me anyways, is that fear that when I said that it was nostalgic, it really is a nostalgic fear. When I was a kid, I lived in Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is a few hours away from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and I would go there quite often, the Rocky Mountains, for snowboarding and camping and fishing and all that. And I just remember as a kid, one of the first fears I had about camping was the fact that at night it gets dark out there in the wilderness. It gets dark out there in the country, I've lived in the country several times in my life now, different kinds of country, from flatland to hill. And a night sky is one of the most beautiful things. Cities have those cool skylines and everything like that, but I'm telling you, if you've never left the city and really just got out in the middle of nowhere and just looked at the sky and all its grandeur, you're missing out. But here's the thing. When you're up and camping in the forest and in the mountains and things like that, it doesn't matter how bright the moon is. It gets dark in those areas. It does. And you're sitting there by the campfire at night, and that campfire is putting off plenty of light that you can see. Everybody's sitting around the campfire, but it is an illusion of light. It's only giving you light as long as you are close to it. It's not projecting light. If you look past the campfire, past the people who are sitting on the other side of it, and you look just deeply enough into the darkness, you'll realize you don't see anything out there. It doesn't matter. The further you look, the deeper it goes. And what's out there, man? You don't know. And that's what terrifies you. And that's what the Huntress, that's what Anna represents to me. She's that thing in the darkness. She's that thing in the forest. She is that force of nature. That thing that reminds you that as developed as we are as human beings, as intelligent as we are, as cognitive as we are, and ambitious as we can be with the things that we build and create and invent, nature still has its way with us if we trespass too hard on it. And that's what she does in her lore. Those unlucky travelers into the forest. You go out in the forest with no light, eventually you are going to adapt. Your eyes will adapt to that darkness, and you'll start to be able to make out the darker shapes, the silhouettes of things, be able to discern darkness in a sense, in layers. But that's not doing you any favors. Not really. Because there are some things out there, man, that you just really, no matter how much of its silhouette you can see, you're not sure what it is you're looking at. It is a scary thing. And that is the Huntress. She is that scary thing in the forest that stalks you. She's that uncertainty. Because you're on her turf. Bring your flashlights, bring your campfires, bring your rifles and your guns, your bows, your arrows, whatever. Pick it. You're on her turf because she is that force of nature. She is the Leshe. She's the Bunny Man. She's the Kikamora. She's the Baba Yaga. She's all those things mixed together to create our own, a modern day folklore that combines so many different cultures. It brings East and West together. I know I'm romanticizing it a little bit, but I mean, she's cool, man. She's really cool. And she freaks me out a little bit, I'm gonna be honest. She freaks me out a little bit. And that's all I got. I want to thank you for hearing me out and spending a little bit of time with me. If you like what I do here, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment if you agree with me, or if I missed on anything, if I'm missing out on anything, and feel free to let me know in the comments, because there are people who know a lot more about Dead by Daylight than I do. And if you're a huge, uber mega fan, because I already said that I'm just a filthy casual. If you're like an uber super fan, then yeah, go ahead and feel free to let me know what it is I've missed, or maybe you have your own personal ideas on her creation and what she's really about. I'd be really interested in hearing about it. I really would. And I'm thankful for all my subscribers. You guys have blessed me with just giving me a chance to do this. And I want to thank the people who just spend time and watch my videos. Even if you don't subscribe, that's fine. You're all friends to me. And that's partly why I don't use scripts, because I like to talk to you guys like you're my friends and not people who I'm trying to sell something to. So, thank you for your time, and y'all come back now.